I like scary movies.
Who wants to be creeped out?
I do.
Scary.
I love seeing the Los Feliz Theater in that opening. It's just so sad. It's coming back. It's not red anymore, but it's All right, we're all back for this big occasion.
What is it
called Halloween?
What is it about folk horror that makes people so unnerved?
Well, it's a good question. I think it's just like when you're out in the nature is so ancient and stuff, and when we're out there, we're kind of in their element, and there's stuff that we don't see behind that tree or behind that forest, and you can easily get caught up in that. And I think folk horror also goes to something just ancient, before people. There's just something else, and if you come up against that can be scary potentially.
And some of the really scary movies that kind of address that sort of visceral horror of ancient religions and these things lurking in our historical past, and like these old rituals that other religions have sort of replaced, but maybe they still work. You know what I mean? Like, I
think that's part of it too. Like it feels real. Like you can see how bad it can be. Like how really our religions nowadays aren't that different, except that maybe they're not sacrificing people, maybe, or believing in little signs and things that you see and making a religion around it, and it sort of forms the root of religion. So I think it's scarier when it gets more and more primitive and more grounded.
Exactly. That's smart.
And us being Western people from this part of the world, we tend to sort of react to those sort of Western types of ritualized paganism types of things. So folk horror films in other parts of the world are very different, because they relate to the folk traditions of that region. So there are tons of great Japanese folk horror movies and Scandinavian ones and Eastern European ones, but I think maybe we're gonna talk about the sort of Western style folk horror, right?
We're going to talk about folk horror, period. We don't know yet. We're going to come up with 3 movies each that we think are great folk horror films. We're going to give you guys a good list of folk horror you can watch during the month of Halloween, because it's such a great time to watch.
Absolutely. Yes. Fall's
happening. It's cold, getting colder. Leaves are on it's going to be so fun. So we're going to start, and Burk's going to go first.
All right.
So this one I'm going to talk about I'm going to very briefly bring it up and say it's not the greatest movie in the world, but it's pretty powerful because it's got that mood, that 70s mood. And sometimes the low budget films have a feel to them that kind of increases the creepiness of it because it's low budget. And you almost feel like you're seeing something that filmmakers went out there and filmed as it was happening, if that makes sense. And there's this movie that I saw when I was a kid on late night television, and I think they didn't edit it or something, but the movie is called Blood on Satan's Claw, and it's 1971, and it is a classic folk horror film about it starts off, the very first beginning of it is a farmer digging through his field, and he uncovers this horrible, like a devil skull type of thing, and it's still got like one of the eyes in the eye socket. And that, when I was a kid, like, I still think about that. It still scares me. But then it turns out to be one of these things where the neighbor, the area, the village is being taken over by sort of a secret satanic cult. It's that kind of a thing. It's got tons of that 70s folk horror vibe to it, that mood, the moodiness, the music, the style of acting, the production design, just the grain of the film. It's definitely something to watch for, like, Halloween movie night. It's a classic, I think. So that's my first one.
That sounds like a really good one. I like it. So I'm going to bring up we'll just go in order backwards. So I'm going to bring up one just from the other side of the world called Tumbad. It's a 2018 Indian film, and it is spectacular because it's folk horror like you haven't seen it before, because it's based on different religions we're not used to. It's shot in a whole like unique location. Like, apparently the location where they actually shot this film, it rains nonstop, never stops. So when you see this, they're shooting this house in a desolate area, and it's pouring rain. Every time they show this house, it's pouring rain. And apparently that location, it's not an effect. It is actually pouring rain. So I love that. Wow. But It's about a guy. Basically, it involves a few things, mostly about how greed is so corrupting and how you will do anything. Sometimes people do anything, no matter what the cost, to enrich themselves. So this guy basically discovers a way to make some money by stealing the gold from this little demon that's underground, and all this place only he knows where it is inside this insane location. So it's really hard and arduous to get to this weird cave, but when you get down there, you steal gold from the devil's diaper. It's very strange. So,
it's really good. Yeah.
Go awry, so your timing has to be perfect. It's really good. Like the way people are trying, like, where are you getting all this money? Oh, I started a business. Really, really good. Can't recommend it enough. You want something really unique.
Well, say the title of it again and spell it for me.
Tumbad, Tumbad.
And I recommend that. I saw that. It was quite good.
Yes, we did a review of it on our channel.
Great production design. My first film is David Bruckner's The Ritual from 2017, which you can watch on Netflix. It's about 5 British buddies who go into the Scandinavian forest, on a hike. And of course, so that's, you're in this dense forest, they're walking and stuff starts happening. They're having, they're talking about relationships and this and that. One guy gets injured, but then, something's following them because of some great shots of just weird looking hands sort of behind a tree. What is behind that tree? And they come up on this village that's lost in time, some sort of, backwoods people. But what really sells it is the creature design, what you see at the end. And it's brilliant. I think it's one of the best monsters or creatures I've ever seen. Beautiful. And it just works from start to finish. So it's quintessential folk horror. Even though it's set in Scandinavia, it's not British folk horror, but the guys are British. So I'll take that. But and David Bruckner is really a good horror director from Atlanta.
Always good.
He always does good things. So The Ritual, you can watch that tonight, and it's a good Halloween watch.
I love horror that's in the woods for some reason. Like that movie was great. Like I remember you get that feeling because I feel like I've seen it all. So when you see horror, that you kind of get that little weird shit. This is kind of getting scary to me. That's huge because nothing scares me anymore when it comes to movies. It's like I feel that like, whoa, like where I almost don't want to know what's going to happen. Like that movie was great.
Yeah. I like being surprised by the ingenuity of something or like, wow, I would never have thought of that myself kind of a thing.
Okay, Burk,
so my second one is a classic. It's an oldie, but it's something that I watch it every so often because it's just so effective. It's got 2 different titles sometimes: Curse of the Demon or Night of the Demon. But it's a 1957 Jacques Tourneur movie.
Yes, classic.
And I think it's folk horror. It's about curses and demons and demonology and people who are into the sort of witchcraft and the power of nature and that kind of thing. There's a great scene where the main character goes to visit this person who, it's basically about a curse that is delivered by handing somebody a piece of paper with the curse on it. And if you take the paper, you then have the curse. And like a postal receipt, but it's actually a curse. But the thing about this film is that there's stories about it where the studio forced the director to put a picture of the demon in the film, like to have an actual demon appear in the film, when in fact he didn't really want to show the demon, because I think his intention, like with his other films, Cat People and The Leopard Man and some other films, I think his intention was to have it be almost like, what if this isn't real? What if the curse is just the fear that handing somebody that piece of paper and saying this is a curse and handing it, and they take it, and then the fear that builds up in them becomes the demon. You know what I mean? So that's what I think this movie is about. And if you watch it and sort of ignore those 2 or 3 shots of the demon,
I like the demon though. I think the demon's cool looking.
I know, I kind of like it too.
I like it
because I sort of pretend that it's part of his imagination or part of the manifestation of a built-in hardwired fear that we have, this visceral sense memory, genetic memory type of fear of demons. But it's just another one of those really moody films. It's got some great photography. It's beautifully shot. The pacing of it is really nice. It's got a genuinely scary feeling to this sort of progression of like, what if because there's characters who are very skeptical, and then it becomes gradually more and more obvious that there is something going on here.
Of course there is. It's a horror movie. It's real.
Yeah. But I love, there's one scene where he goes to visit the guy, who's a magical wizard or whatever. But the cool thing is that he's wearing like clown makeup because he's entertaining children with a magic show. So it's like one kind of magic, merged with another kind of magic. And while he's talking to him, the guy is basically saying, do you want a demonstration of my power? And then suddenly the clouds go dark and it becomes like a stormy day. And you're thinking, did he do that? Or did he just see some clouds in the distance and kind of exploit that with this guy? There's things like that you can interpret a lot of different ways with this movie, but it does have that escalation of menace and this really cool, moody feeling. Jacques Tournier, was great at that. And it's just a classic film. I love it.
Right. So I'm going to lump two together because it's a fantastic director and it's the first two movies. So I'm going to talk about Hereditary and Midsommar. Everyone, regardless of the time of year, I'm going to say right now, these are two of the best horror movies ever made. So
yeah,
I know that's high praise.
Years, but of all time, I think.
Hereditary blew me away. It's actually, yes, essential viewing. Definitely watch these films. I mean, Ari Aster is a master. I cannot believe these are his first two films because they are absolutely artistic masterpieces. But very different approaches. One is very dark and claustrophobic and interior. And the other one's very blue skies out in the open, very culty, beautiful horror. So it's weird to say that, but I would say Midsommar is also one of the most beautiful films. I mean, just everyone's seen the memes of the flowers that she's wearing. And because part of the actual context of the film is they're doing hallucinogenics. So when she's wearing the flowers, they're all moving and mutating, but in very subtle, creepy ways, like the landscape sort of changing. Like it's not this big obvious thing. And I'll never forget when we saw that in the theater and there was an earthquake.
That's right.
We were all in the theater and they just froze the film and people running out. We're just sitting there going,
and it was an earthquake.
Yeah. So that felt very prophetic to me that there would be an earthquake during this film. So Ari Aster, Hereditary, unbelievable shocks in this. I mean, so disturbing. I watched it twice, almost worse the second time because I knew what was coming. And then Midsommar, which is just hallucinatory, great brilliance. So those are two fantastic folk horror films I recommend for Halloween.
I agree.
I agree too. They're touchstone films. They're just so good.
So good.
I'm going to go with, for my second folk horror film, In the Earth, directed by Ben Wheatley, who makes really interesting British folk horror. And this is about two scientists that go out into the woods. It was shot during the pandemic, so it's only just really two actors, actually three actors. They go out to do some field studies, and they meet this odd guy out there in the woods who's sort of living out there. And he claims he's like a sorcerer or something like that. And he puts a spell. He says he puts a spell onto them, but actually there's something coming up from the earth, some sort of mist that's causing them to see things. Mm-hmm. And it's really about the earth or nature sort of getting back at man because they're doing all these. They're kind of ruining the planet or ruining this part of England. And these scientists and this other third guy are trying to deal, what's going on here. So it's very hallucinogenic, very freaky, very weird. The music is odd. It has a little bit of, even though there's no monsters, it has kind of a weird H.P. Lovecraft vibe to it. Yeah. And it's really well acted. And it puts you out into a different place. And I think for me, essentially, folk horror is if I'm out there in the woods, I'm not an experienced camper, and something weird happens, I go, oh yeah, I'm out here in the woods.
Yeah, you're out alone. Like all of a sudden it expands. Like the world, you feel something very small when something weird's happening. You realize how far away and isolated you are.
Yeah, and of course, there's no cell service and this and that, and all that stuff happens, and
Love
it can realistically happen in the middle of nowhere. So, In the Earth, it's available to watch. I like Ben Wheatley, even though his last film was the Meg 2 Trench. Hey, but his other
Unwatchable.
films are quite good and worth seeing. So,
yeah,
I'll go
he's a
with
good
In the Earth.
director. I'm rooting for him.
Yeah. So that's
Okay,
number 2
Burk.
for me.
That's great.
That's interesting. The woods is part of folk horror, and we've talked a lot about the idea of isolation horror, where like you were saying, you're out there, and I've felt that way. I love to travel, and I've found myself in very remote places at certain points during my travels. And one thing I always try to keep out of my mind is how isolated I am. I mean, I like there's a thing where it's a love hate, or not love hate, but kind of like I want to go to those isolated places, but then you have to sort of block out that horrible thought of like, what if I had appendicitis? or what if some person was stalking me, or what if something happened,
Why I don't go camping.
Yeah, don't
Exactly.
yeah, just don't go camping. And
It just seems bad.
yeah,
If
just
these
not gonna
movies are any indication.
I know.
Yeah, haven't you ever seen a movie? Don't go camping. But no, I mean, I love being in those isolated situations, and I actually, in a way, I think you kind of like that feeling of slightly on the edge of danger, and kind of gives you a primitive feeling of like our ancestral, what's built into us through our evolution or whatever. You get out into the woods and you kind of have this feeling of like this is where most of our evolutionary history happened, out here in the trees, and there's something mystical sometimes about the woods and nature. Aside from just the picturesque beauty of it. And my last film that I want to talk about is something that really exploited the idea of that, and in a way that I think is revolutionary. I mean, there were other films before it that kind of did this thing, but this movie did it so overtly and so beautifully that, and it is scary, even though you don't see anything. And I'm talking about the Blair Witch Project. Some people sort of put this movie down and they say it wasn't scary, but I think they maybe didn't see it. They were not, were like kind of watching
they want
it.
the big kind of David Gordon Green trash scares that are big and loud and stupid instead of small, subtle, and creepy. And
exactly.
They wanted a witch to jump out with a knife or something. And
yeah, this is like found footage, subtlety that I thought was genius.
It goes into that idea of the mystery of the woods. You're talking about the forest and the woods and that beauty of it, and the mystery that's sort of inherent in nature. I think that's sort of built into our relationship to nature, which used to be all we knew earlier in our evolution as animals. Now we're these civilized humans who live in houses with internet and Wi-Fi and smartphones, but there's still something in us that it has a kind of a connection to the mystery, the ancient mystery of the woods. And I think Blair Witch kind of really taps into that, because they're what they're talking about. I mean, there's the story of the Blair Witch, and there's this creepy legend of the Blair Witch, and they're investigating it with their little video cameras in 1999, but I think on a deeper level, it's about the sort of built-in fear of the dark that's in the woods.
So many creepy shots of them in the tent, like freaking out, going, "What I hear? What was that sound? What was it?" And realizing how alone you are. That's super scary.
And also the sound design, like screaming from far off of their buddy.
And was it screaming? Like, what is that?
What's going on? Yeah.
Oh, it's so creepy.
Yeah.
And that scene where she's looking at something, and you see her, you don't see the thing she's looking at. The camera is sort of fallen down, I think, and it's on her face, and she's like, "What is that?" Like, you don't see it, so your imagination has to look at her face of what she's seeing and the fear in her face. The performances in the film are incredible. It's not amateurish. You would think that something like that was the found footage kind of handheld camera kind of thing on a low budget, that the acting would sort of ruin it or something. But this, you totally believe all of these people people in the film. And that shot of her where she's seeing something horrifying and you don't see the horrifying thing, you see her reaction to the horrifying thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is 100,000% scarier than the special effect might have been. Yeah, because it accesses your deepest, most visceral, ancient fears of the darkness.
Right. And sometimes, a movie like that, like this is about turning off all the lights, sitting with the movie and just getting it. This isn't like dogs running around, lights on, going get this is like concentrate. This is one time, people. One time. Just this one time. Do it for this movie.
Do it for Halloween.
I felt different after I saw that movie. Like I felt like this, I don't know. It was really profound to me at the time. Yeah. All right.
I love
so mine and because I'm wearing the shirt, I'm doing the movie The Witch, which I have to say
Which
the bitch. This is the Robert Eggers film starring Anna Joy Taylor, and I guess it's kind of like it kind of started her career big time. Like this was her big entryway. I think she's a lot younger then, but I think part of it is for this film. This is 2015. I think what I really liked about it, first of all, was just the idea of there's this Puritan family and they're alone out in this cabin. They're isolated. Again, they're living there. This is like set way back in the day, like 1630s, like way back in the day. Like really. So they encounter kind of this evil in the woods, basically. Evil in the woods, Burk. Evil in the woods. so that's
my third folk horror film.
that's the top movie. So anyway, so they because they're super religious, they're trying to interpret all these things happening through the lens of religion, and that it's probably a demonic or a devil or like however they're going to interpret evil in the woods, they're going to do it that way. But really, the reason I love this movie is Black Phillip. He is the breakout star, best thing in the movie. He is the black goat that is in the movie. So every scene he's in is amazing, and they make full use of the unpredictability of this animal who actually plays a pretty integral part in this movie. Like he's not just like, they have a lot of goats on the farm, but this is Black Phillip, and he is trouble. And apparently he was really hard to work with also because he was butting everyone and chasing everyone, scaring everyone. So it made sense, but he there's a reason there's shirts with him on it. There's a great line, "Live deliciously," which is something that he says. And it's just a gorgeous film, really like beautifully shot. Like there was amazing tracking shots, chasing the goat through the woods and through the landscape, and just really, you really feel like you're back in that time. It does not feel like there's anything modern at all in this movie. It's gorgeous. So highly recommend The Witch. Is kind of a unique kind of little.
It has the mood, and the mood is the thing. It's like that, like what Mark said earlier about this sort of transformative or like almost like a disorienting feeling, or something that you feel changed. I think you said that about Blair Witch. There's something about really good horror films or a good emotionally engaging film that you walk out of it feeling like you've been through something.
Yeah, and you just feel like there's a few movies that have done that to me. One was that. One was Hereditary. Yes. And oddly, not even that great a movie, but I think it was called Session 8. Is that what? I forget.
It was called Session 9.
For some reason, that movie completely freaked me out. I don't know why. Beautiful, but like, so it's a super low-key weird film. I don't even super remember, but I remember after it was over, I all of a sudden, all my senses felt heightened, and I kept hearing things, and I was like, like it affected me. And I swear horror movies do not affect me. I find them very relaxing. I like horror movies. They're not scary to me. So when something does that, I'm like, whoa, something special.
Yeah, that's a good movie to revisit.
Yeah.
Well, my final film is a film called Nmen, ENYS, second word men, but that that's Cornish for Stone Island. And so it's set in 1973. It's filmed with a 16 millimeter camera by this director Mark Jenkin, and it's the dialogue is added in later, so it gives you that feel of an older film. And it's about a woman by herself on an island, and she's environmentalist volunteer who just every day checks this one flower, and she puts a ledger, no change, but something starts to happen and things start playing with time. She starts seeing herself as a younger person and all this weird, and she starts seeing
This sounds cool.
It's really well done. There's like this obelisk, a stone obelisk that's at the very far end. Like she's looking at her door and she sees it real close to like the water. Then as the movie goes on, it gets a little bit closer. And is it getting closer? So things start.
That's funny.
So it's very folk horror. I mean, this is like elemental folk horror. There's hardly any dialogue. It's just this camera. And it's very odd and weird, and you don't really know what's happening, but there's a feel of like nature is affecting this woman and screwing with her mind. And so that is like, to me, is what folk horror is about. And it feels like The Wicker Man. It looks like, because it was set in 1973 is when The Wicker Man was released. So I don't think that is a coincidence. So
that's cool.
He's an interesting director, Mark Jenkin. He's from Wales, and he's made 2 films on this little 16 millimeter camera from that time period. And it's just neat. So it's on Hulu called Nmen.
Okay.
It's different.
Cool.
That's why I liked it. So there you go. Those are
horror, people. That's what we're talking about. So good. We're going to try to do a series of these, doing a bunch of different genres, suggesting that you can watch this month of October. So look for our other videos about cool horror.
And of course, you can watch these all throughout the year like we do. Horror is 12 months a year for us.
I like to see at least one a day. That's sort of like a goal. Don't usually get them one a day, but I try.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Halloween's just an excuse.
Yeah.
Sort of like
this is when it's okay. You don't seem like
just
mentally. Exactly. This is like you're not mentally ill for liking horror movies during October. And no one thinks you're weird. So it's like cool. Everybody's asking. Yeah, someone said, "What's your favorite horror film?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, that's such a loaded question."
Of course.
You can't just answer. You're like, "So what genre? Like, what do you like?" Like, I can't just tell you what's the best horror film. That's not a good question.
Yeah. There's like 20 different genres of horror.
I can't just come out of the blue with 3 great horror movies. It doesn't work that way.
I had a friend recently texted me. He's like, "Hey, what's a good horror movie I should watch?" And it's like, okay, dude, you've just opened up a gigantic, and it ended up being this really long, and another friend of mine got in, and it became this huge long thread of deep dive into the genre of horror films, and it was mostly about 70s because he was saying he likes the mood, and we were talking about that mood, that feeling of there's something, you said something about 1973 being sort of like ground zero for folk horror, and I think for me 73 is sort of ground zero for horror. I think everything ripples out forwards and backwards from 1973.
It's true.
Awesome.
Exactly.
All right. So be sure to subscribe, like, and comment.
Absolutely.
Let us know your favorite folk horror movies in the horror movies in the comments. We'd love to hear about it. I always try to find some new. Yeah, but for this one, folk horror. But yeah, just any horror film that you love that you think we haven't seen. Good luck.
Yeah,
exactly. Good luck
with that.
Good luck giving us something we haven't seen. But I always like people to try.
Well, that was fun. Thanks everybody for watching.
Happy Halloween, everyone.